Welcome to the Difference Podcast. Today we continue our conversation with Reverend Eddie Spencer. Stay tuned. We thank you for joining us today on the Difference Podcast. We're going to continue our conversation with Reverend Eddie Spencer. Eddie is, if you didn't hear last week, is a person whose life completely turned around. I mean, when I say completely, I mean dramatically. As I said last week, from prison to pastor. And his passion is to introduce people to Jesus Christ and to have their life changed just like his was. He's currently pastor at Out the Woods United Methodist Church in Jackson, Mississippi, and is just so full of stories that I could have recorded for days and not gotten them all. I said at the last session, just understand that if it sounds a little wispy on his side, he has had some catastrophic health concerns and is recovering and is a walking miracle. And not only because of his health, but because of the number of people he's touched with his stories and his faith and his passion.
And if Steve sounds wispy, you're just wispy all the time.
I was wearing a mask when I was recording.
The masked Methodist man.
That's it, masked Methodist man. So we hope you'll listen in and just hear Eddie's, the rest of Eddie's incredible story. I think that you will. We had said last week, you hear several ex-Methodist Hour people on there. He mentions Connie, he mentions Keith, and mentions Sam. And so part of what makes this story so special is it's not one person that helped him change. It was this wonderful stream and flow of people God sent into his life to help him find his way. So listen in as he shares that story with us. We're so excited to have our second episode with Reverend Eddie Spencer. If you didn't hear the first one, you need to go back and listen to it. Eddie talked about the change that God made in his life, his journey through prison, the dealing with anger, and it's just an incredible story that you can't really contain in a small podcast, but we hope you'll go and read his book and find out more about that incredible transformational story that really made him a different man. Well, Eddie, as you ended last time, you were talking about giving the inaugural address at the inaugural prayer at the governor's inauguration. Once you were out, after 9 years in prison, God wasn't through changing you, was he?
No, he was not. When I got out, thank God that he had connected me to people who could help me make that transition and everything. While I was in prison, I was able to come out on a prison fellowship mission, which churches will adopt inmates and we go into the community. And Wells United Methodist Church adopted me. And so when I got out, there was a family, Jim and Michelle Young, who adopted me, who I stayed with for really probably about 6 months before I could make that transition to get out on my own. And just looking back, thank God how he put people in place to help us to get to the place that he wants us to be. Jim and Michelle, they called me Sonny Boy, and they really loved me like I was their child. They don't have any kids, but they loved me. Once again, how God put people in my life to help me to experience love. And
that Wells Church is so inviting.
Yeah.
Our friend Keith Tonkel
yeah.
just was one of those who was really committed to helping people turn their
Yeah.
lives around.
And I get to Keith Tonkel a little later, but Jim and Michelle, they also was like a parent to me. When I first got out, You know, the biggest mistake that a lot of guys make, or women make, when they get out, is trying to catch up or make up for the time that they have spent. You cannot do that. You set yourself up for failure. You set a trap for yourself. And a prime example, uh, Jim, which I was on parole still, even though I had the clemency, but they said, hey, we're going to put you all on several months of parole just to see how we going to do or how we going to act. And Jim told me my curfew was 11 o'clock. And I told him, I said, he said, Eddie, he said, he said, make sure you be back in, and at that time I was wanting to try to just, just be free. Didn't want to not get in trouble, but just have the freedom just to be out, and everything, not knowing that I was setting a trap for myself. That's what happened. A lot of time when you begin to, my daddy used to tell me anything after 12 o'clock, really anything after 11 o'clock, is nothing but trouble. Jim said, you need to be back in at before 11. And I got upset. I said, man, I'm saying this to myself. Man, I'm tired of people telling me what to do,
I just got out of prison.
And I just got out of prison and everything. But I ended up making it back to back home. It was around close to about 10:30 or whatever. And guess what happened? Time I walked through the door, the parole officer called. Just imagine if I would have allowed my anger and my rebellion to control my life, it would have robbed me out of an opportunity. I would have been going back, and God continued to put people like that in my past to help me to get adjusted to society, because I didn't have no type of life skills. A lot of things I did not know. I didn't even know how to drive. I didn't know. I never forget going to J.C. Penney to buy some towels, and when the lady told me that towel cost, I think she said about $4 or $5, one of the big towels. I said, ma'am, you made a mistake. I said, I supposed to get a whole bundle. I supposed to get probably about 5 towels for this. So when I went to prison, you can get a bundle of towels. But the lady asked me, she said, where have you been? I didn't want to tell her where I've been, so I just went in and paid the money. But also what got me and threw me off, you remember when they had the cash registers that would tell you your price with the talking cash registers? Yeah. Man, that scared me half to death. I was standing there looking, and people was all behind me, and they said, sir, they said, move on. And I said, did you hear that? Did you? They asked the question, where have you been? That being talking. But I never experienced that. And so the Lord began to, Jim and them kind of helped me find a place and everything to be able to step out on my own and everything. That was very frightening to become, as some would call, independent. Because I never, even though, yes, I was out there on them streets doing my own thing, but now I'm in a whole different world, living a whole different life. And now I got to make choices. Also going to work,
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And it was very frightening. And the first job I had was some people who had some rental houses over in some of, as some would call, your most worst areas in Jackson. And it really made me angry how they treated those people. these landlords who I was working for, they would come, take people's stuff, and yes, some may be a month behind. They'll take their stuff and throw it out on the street, just to show them that they was in control. They walk around with their pistols and everything. And I used to have to go and clean up those places. And I never will forget, there was a house with a wood floor like this, and they said that we want you to wax that floor. And I told them, I said, okay, I'll be glad to wax it, but do you have a buffer? And I knew that they had one. No, we don't have no buffer. What you're gonna have to do is get down on your hands and knees and wax it and everything. That's what you're gonna wax it with. And angry again. I became so angry, and the Lord said, "Don't you quit." I wanted to walk off that day, but He said, "Don't you quit." And I was working with some young guys also in my community over there in West Capitol area. And the day that I was off, it was like one Saturday. I took those young guys and we dug the foundation for the first 2 Habitat houses that was built in the state of Mississippi, right off of Capitol Street, right behind Stupot.
Cool.
And when I was there, there was a guy, Mike McName, who was there, who asked me. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm working with these young guys, making sure that they don't go to prison." All of them was gangbangers and everything. And Mike told me, he said, "Well, there's a program. I don't know if you heard of it." And first of all, I told Mike, a little about myself and everything. And he said, "There's a program called Young Life who are looking to start a ministry in the urban community." He said, "Have you ever heard of it?" I said, "No, I never heard of it." And I told him, I said, "Well, I just been out of prison, probably about 7 months." And he said, "I want to introduce you to him." And so he introduced me to John Evans, who was the director of Young Life. So I ended up coming on staff of Young Life for really almost 9 years, starting the urban Young Life. And that right there provided me a lot of opportunity to meet a lot of people, a lot of business people, a lot of folks who took interest in my life to help me, in areas that I need help and everything and every and even trying to get me into school, and I ended up getting them in Belhaven. But what I found out, in which I had to go and get tested, and I did, I didn't know, because I never heard of the word, that I had dyslexia, not dyslexia, dysgraphic. You familiar with dysgraphic?
Not.
A lot of people becoming familiar with it now, but a lot of people don't know dysgraphic is you can have it up here, but when it comes to transfer it to your hand, you just become paralyzed, and I had that trouble all of my life, not knowing what it was till I went and got tested, and that's what even going to course of study, why I struggle, and it's really embarrassing. It's really, I'm talking about, it's tormenting. I'm talking about you sitting there. I'm talking about just basic lock. Just like somebody can go and write a sentence like that, it would take me almost 10 minutes or so once my hand get locked up to even try to write a sentence. Then I had to go back and try to write it over because, didn't do it right. And I had people, to tutor me and stuff like that. But I ended up through Young Life, still my connection with Wells. Keith Tunkel asked me. He said, Eddie, he said, I would love for you to go with me to Lake Julester. And he said, they have youth conference. And he said, I would love for you to, Keith was one of the kind of number one spokesperson up there during that time. He said, I want to put you on the speaking team to speak. And I ended up speaking up at Lake Julester for probably about 6 or 7 years there. But Keith was the first one to introduce me. Him and I would go and spend a week there speaking at Lake Julester and everything. And then Sam Morris and Keith introduced me to Sam Morris. I never will forget when I first met Sam. We was getting ready to fly. I met him, supposed to be meeting him at the airport. And Sam said, how would you, I asked Sam, said, how would I know you? He said, I know who you are. You this big old bald-headed black guy and everything. And I said, well, I need to know who you are and everything. And he said, I'll be waiting for you at the airport. And I never will fly back on a plane to Asheville. Man, we was on this little old plane. Look, Sam, Sam was not a small guy.
Small guy.
And I was not a small guy, but we were stuck on this plane, and somebody saw us and felt sorry for me. They said, hey, I don't mind sitting with him, and so Sam could move, because we was cramped on that little plane. But Sam and I ended up speaking then Connie Shelton, and do you know Rosemary Brown?
Yes, I do.
Me and her also spoke numerous of times up there, and like I say, did it for probably about 7 years up at Lake Julester. But when Sam moved to Galloway, where he was with the Methodist Hour, and we did a lot of things. But when he moved to Galloway had an interest in the Capitol Street area. And Sam called me up one day and said, Eddie, Galloway have taken on the property of Capitol Street United Methodist Church, and we want to kind of start an outreach there with the youth. Now, Stewart, Galloway was really flooding Stewart with volunteers and working with them and everything. But they kind of wanted to start, a youth outreach. And there was a lady who was there, Miss Cooper, who was working with some young peoples and everything. But they wanted to organize it. And Sam asked me, he said, would you consider, working? By that time, I had moved back to the Delta to start a young life in the Delta. Parachurch ministry in the Delta does not survive. A lot of people don't support parachurch ministry, especially local.
Exactly.
Now, if I was doing something over in China or Africa or whatever, they would have supported. So I went into the restaurant business and everything. But when Sam asked me to, consider that, the Lord began to deal with me. Eddie, I did not call you into the restaurant business. I called you into ministry. And so my wife and I was, want to come back here. And so we was going to move back, hoping that the thing with Galloway will open up, but it did not open up. Emory Jackson, during that time, I think he had just got his doctorate, had said that he felt that the Lord had called him in that area and everything. So ended up didn't go there. So a position, St. Andrew Mission, opened up. And I ended up going as the assistant executive director for St. Andrew Mission. And then I get a call after a couple of years being at St. Andrew Mission, get a call from Sam again. Say, there's a young couple well, it was three people that he wanted me to meet. Chris Comer, Sheila, and Fruitway. What's his name?
David Fuqua.
David.
Yeah.
Say, I want you to meet them because what they are, the vision that they have, I think you would fit in. And that's when Chris and Sheila went to Alderwood for the first time. And Fruitway, he went to Levelwood.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan was, to try to bring the South Jackson area together and also to minister to the community and everything, do mission in the community. And so Sam introduced me to Chris, and then the ball got to rolling the bishop, and the bishop and them, appointed me and everything. And that was my first appointment. And the Lord, I'm telling you, it was a blessing. It didn't go the way that they planned, well, envisioned, but ministry, we did some great ministry there. And during that time, one of the things, the biggest mistake we made is that we underestimate not only the power of Alderwood and Levelwood during that time, but also the presence. That those churches was more established than we really thought that they was, and they had their own individuality where they felt they didn't want to be connected. They felt that no, Alderwood is Alderwood, Levelwood is Levelwood,
Yeah.
and don't you make the mistake and call them. If we would have stuck with them and just fed and not continue to let word get out that they was planning on bringing those South Jackson churches together, I believe Alderwood and Levelwood, then Edward, would have still been very strong, which even though the number is not strong at Alderwood, but they still have a strong ministry and people who are dedicated to the community. But I believe if they would not have came in and tried to combine the churches, those churches, because they was financially stable, they owned their property and everything. They had people who was committed, and some of those same peoples are still committed to that community. And I'm talking about like elder people who, even though somebody said somebody got killed over there, they still came.
Yeah.
Some even got robbed and the person knocked them down and broke their arm. Still the next Sunday.
Well, is it Grace and Gravy or Gravy and Grace? I always get it backwards.
It was Grace and Gravy.
Yeah.
But coming back to Alderwood, I'm talking, I still have strong ministry, but Grace and Gravy, with the congregation, which is 95% age 70 and up.
Yeah.
The personality, the demands was too much for the congregation. And what happened was that Alderwood had lost, and I tell ministry even when I was at Galloway, I said, please do not allow your mission to overshadow your congregation, where you become more, that's Gravy and Grace.
Mm-hmm.
It need to be Alderwood who is doing Craving Grace. It need to be Galloway who's doing Grace Place
Yeah.
and everything. That it, just like any other ministry of the church, that's the way it need to be, because what happened is you begin to put more focus on your mission than your congregation.
And it takes such a delicate balance to love the people that are there and to love the people in the community you're in.
And you can do the both by a pastor need to assure his congregation that, number one, that this is you all ministry that God has called you on to, not that Craving Grace is in control. That's one thing. Then another thing, the pastor need to let the church know that your growth, your well-being is important. That we're not going to shuck you for anyone else. And not do you the same way. Everybody is loved. Everybody has a place and everything. But we're not going to allow anyone to just come in and just overshadow you.
Yeah.
And take advantage. And that's what I mean by strong personality. A lot of them will come on Sundays. I'm talking about Sundays. They have their worship service. I'm talking about the worship service of Craving Grace. But then they'll come over and stand and just overshadow and making demands and stuff. And no, it's worship time. And some will argue, say, well, if it's worship time, you need to stop and meet the need of the person. No, we design a moment for that. Totally focus on making sure that they have the hygiene, food, and everything to make sure of that.
Steve, what two powerful episodes. I mean, great interviews, and for him to be so weak and to be and agree to be interviewed and all, it just makes it more powerful for me.
When I called him, I said, Eddie, are you up to this? He said, until I draw my last breath, I want people to know that Jesus changed my life.
How about that?
I just thought, I'm listening to John Wesley. My goodness.
Yeah.
It just, his heart, his authenticity, his intensity was just incredible. And I loved him already, but after we had our conversation, there were so many pieces of his story I didn't know. And when you hear all the things that happened in his life, all the challenges he faced, and yet for him to be where he is, it's nothing but the grace of God.
And this type of story, his difference, is exactly what we want to keep bringing to folks. And I hope if you're listening to this and you're enjoying these interviews with young people, old people, when I say old people, I'm meaning you and me, Steve, but all of these types of...
Really, I'm not dead yet.
I'm not dead. And all of these kinds of just inspiring journeys through life that we want to bring to you. We hope that you'll sign up, through Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you're listening to this for notifications, to get the notification when the shows come out, to seek us out, to share us with friends, or post on Facebook if something particularly reached you in a way like Eddie's story.
Right.
So just keep us in mind, and as we're trying to get started, and we've got a wealth of shows, some really cool conversations, not just with others, but some of the programs with just Steve and me exploring ways of thinking and parts of our own journeys and sharing sometimes things we maybe shouldn't share and all of this. But we've got a backlog of programs. So we hope that you'll dive into these archives and share those and just enjoy, because we are enjoying these conversations.
We're having a good time. I want to hear somebody say, I binged your podcast.
Bless them. And then we will help get you medical care.
Exactly. there is a number you can call.
That's right.
Well, as we close out today, we laugh. But the other invitation we want to give is, if you know a difference, if you know somebody who just is making a difference and march to a different drum, let us know. Contact us and either send us a message on Facebook, or if you know us, give us a call, and we would love to follow up on that. We have a long list of people we're going to interview, and we can't wait for you to hear them, but we always want to meet new people. That's part of the joy of this. So thank you for listening in. I will ask you to say a special prayer for Eddie as he continues to fight his health battles, and just pray that God continues to use him in the way that he has. And as always, hey, remember, live loved.
You've been listening to The Difference, a presentation of The Hour. The Difference is made in conjunction with and partnership with the Institute for Southern Storytelling at Mississippi College. To find out more about the Institute and ways that we are partnering and mentoring young lives through storytelling, filmmaking, and more, visit us at southernstorytelling.mc.edu. And for more resources from The Hour and from The Difference, check us out at our Hour Stream platform with the streaming content at thehour.org. I'm Anthony Thaxton. Thanks for joining.